Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba at the White House. What the two leaders announced at their joint press conference and what new executive orders Trump signed today. Jason Blair has the highlights. President Trump issues sanctions against the International Criminal Court. The Israeli Prime Minister and other world leaders shared their thoughts on the move. Jason Perry reports. With just hours to go before thousands of USAID employees were to be placed on administrative leave, a federal judge puts a plan on hold. Lawmakers are pushing to ban China's DeepSeek AI chatbot, why they say it raises serious data, privacy, and national security concerns. Tensions between House and Senate Republicans emerge over the reconciliation bill as House Democrats threaten to force a government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump today signing a new round of executive orders, as well as meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba for the first time. Joining us now live is NTD's correspondent Jason Blair at the White House. Good evening, Jason. What is the latest?
Yeah, that's right, Tiff. So Trump did sign another batch of executive orders. There's still more information coming out on those, but I'll highlight a couple. One is related to the Second Amendment. Now, what this order does basically is tasks the new Attorney General with looking into any executive actions, orders that have taken place, and basically assess if anything has, infringed on the Second Amendment, and to basically come up with a plan of action to the president on how to address these possible infringements. Now, another executive order that was just signed as well as the establishment of the White House Faith Office. Now, this is following an executive order the other day that Trump signed that is combating anti-Christian bias. So this is related to that executive order. Now, the new White House Faith Office is going to be focusing on promoting religious freedom as well as support for religious communities in America.
And Jason, President Trump, of course, welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba to the White House today. What are some takeaways from their meeting?
U.S. Steel is a very important company to us. It was the greatest company in the world for 15 years, many years ago, 80 years ago. And we didn't want to see that leave. And it wouldn't actually leave, but the concept, psychologically not good. So they've agreed to invest heavily in U.S. Steel as opposed to own it. And that sounds very exciting. And we're going to meet with Nissan next week, the head of Nissan, very great company. And they'll work out the details. I'll help. I'll be there to mediate and arbitrate.
Yeah, so as you saw just now, Trump was talking about U.S. Steel. That one of the big topics, big news that kind of came out from their meeting today here at the White House earlier. Now, Trump was asked about U.S. Steel. He said he had not changed his mind about selling U.S. Steel, but as you saw, Japan has agreed to basically heavily invest in U.S. Steel. So he was pretty happy to talk about that today. Now, some more highlights. They did a joint press conference, the Japanese Prime Minister and President Trump, and some of the highlights from Prime Minister Ishiba was that they are going to be ramping up their defense spending, as well as they want to work with the U.S. to completely denuclearize North Korea. And then he was pretty excited to announce that Japan will now be heavily investing, significantly increasing their investment in the U.S. Here's what he had to say earlier today on that.
The momentum for Japanese companies to invest in the United States is growing even stronger. Today, I conveyed my willingness to cooperate together to elevate Japan's investment in the United States to an unprecedented amount of $1 trillion.
So yeah, $1 trillion, a pretty big announcement from the Japanese prime minister there. Now tariffs did come up. A lot of people had some questions. Reporters were asking about it. Trump basically said that they did talk about them, but not too many details about tariffs. He said if there are going to be, likely they will be reciprocal tariffs between both Japan and the U.S. on that. Back to you, Tiff.
All right, Jason, thanks for those updates. India's prime minister is set to visit President Trump next week. The announced visit comes after a plane carrying around 100 Indian nationals who were deported from the U.S. landed in India. Prime Minister Modi will become one of the first world leaders to visit the White House during President Trump's second term. Modi and Trump were on good terms during Trump's first administration. They held a call last week where they discussed illegal immigration and other topics. The Trump administration has so far not targeted India for tariffs, but Trump has accused India of excessive tariffs on U.S. goods and has threatened to do the same to Indian goods to the U.S. Last week, the Indian Foreign Ministry said the two countries are working to strengthen ties. Israel's prime minister thanked President Trump for issuing sanctions against the International Criminal Court. This comes after the court issued an arrest warrant against the prime minister. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas has provided the names of 3 more hostages set to be released tomorrow. NTD's Jason Perry brings us the latest.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to make his rounds while in D.C. On Friday, he met with House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said President Trump's actions are what decisive leadership looks like.
Before he even took office in January, President Trump and his team helped secure the ceasefire agreement and the return of American and Israeli hostages. This week, he announced a plan to exert maximum pressure on Iran and its proxies who terrorize the Israeli people and the world.
Netanyahu also praised Trump, thanking him for renewing Israel's supply of weapons that were stopped under the Biden administration. And that's not all. On Friday, the Department of State approved a possible sale of weapons to Israel worth almost $7 billion. And also in support of the prime minister, Trump authorized economic and travel sanctions against certain individuals who work for the International Criminal Court, or ICC. The ICC is responsible for prosecuting war crimes, crimes against humanity, and more. And they issued an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu, accusing the Israeli military of intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. This is something Israel has denied, while saying that Hamas terrorists use civilians as human shields. Netanyahu shared his thoughts on Trump's actions against the International Court.
He issued yesterday these sanctions on this scandalous and corrupt organization, the ICC, that threatens the right of all democracies to defend themselves by themselves.
A United Nations spokesperson shared his thoughts on the sanctions against the ICC.
International criminal law is an essential element to fighting impunity, which is unfortunately widespread in today's world. The International Criminal Court is its essential element, and it must be allowed to work in full independence.
And in a joint statement, 79 countries reaffirmed their, quote, continued and unwavering support for the independence, impartiality, and integrity of the ICC. On the other hand, Hungary's foreign minister said the sanctions were, quote, totally understandable, and that the ICC had recently become a, quote, biased political tool. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas released the names of 3 hostages who are to be released on Saturday. They are Eli Sharabi, Ohad Ben Ami, and Or Levy. The Hamas media office said Israel was expected to free 183 Palestinian prisoners and detainees in exchange. Jason Perry, NTD News.
DeepSeek may become the latest Chinese app to be banned from government devices in the U.S. That's as lawmakers are saying it raises national security concerns. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The No DeepSeek on Government Devices Act would ban the Chinese AI application on all official devices. Now it's being led by Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer and Republican Congressman Darren LaHood. And they say that there are significant privacy risks, particularly with user information being accessed by the Chinese regime.
With DeepSeek and the Chinese government literally putting into their code an ability to capture data on Americans, on their searches, on their private, on either private documents that they're using DeepSeek for.
It's the same reason TikTok received overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress to ban the app. Now, China's 2017 national intelligence law requires that all Chinese citizens and business people to provide literally all data to the party. DeepSeek's privacy policy itself says that it collects user information, including any text or audio the user provides. DeepSeek also self-censors information about the Chinese regime's human rights abuses and expresses loyalty to the Communist Party.
China has a plan to replace the United States, and they're working at it every single day. They want to beat us technologically, militarily, economically, diplomatically. And again, it's interesting on DeepSeek, you will never see any criticism of Xi Jinping, of the Communist Chinese Party. You won't see any support for Taiwan and their freedom and opportunity there.
And the U.S. is not alone here. Canada, Australia, Belgium, Italy, South Korea, and Taiwan have already put major restrictions, if not outright banned DeepSeek on all government devices. Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Tensions between House and Senate Republicans emerge over a reconciliation bill as House Democrats threaten to force a government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
No, there won't be any details announced, at least until the end of the weekend, but probably closer to Monday. We have just a few final details to iron out, and it's going very well. I'm very excited about where we are. And
that was Speaker of the House Mike Johnson acknowledging that House Republicans missed their own deadline to mark up and pass a budget resolution this week, and that was despite a 5-hour-long meeting with President Trump at the White House on Thursday. This Friday night, Senate Republicans are traveling to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump to go over their proposal for the reconciliation process as Senate Majority Leader John Thune looks to leapfrog House Republicans with his two-bill approach.
Our message to our friends and colleagues in the Senate is allow the House to do its work. We are moving this as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. Very positive developments.
House Democrats threatened this week to force a government shutdown on March 14th if House Republicans insist on large-scale spending cuts.
House Republicans don't appear interested in working for everyday Americans because they are working for Elon Musk.
Democratic lawmakers participated in protests in front of the USAID headquarters and the Department of Education.
This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
Acting Secretary Denise Carter, will you stand up to a would-be king who thinks that he can dismantle the Department of Education without congressional concurrence?
While Senate Democrats continue to stall the confirmation process of President Trump's nominees, like the in-committee vote to advance the nomination of Kash Patel to be the next FBI director that was postponed until next Thursday.
Turned out that Mr. Patel couldn't remember Stu Peters. Stu Peters, who would he be? Well, he appeared on his podcast 8 different occasions. 8 different occasions, couldn't remember him when I asked about him. You know, I have to question whether or not this man is really ready to take over this job and to guide these men and women who dedicate their lives to the safety of the United States.
This week, the Senate confirmed Russell Vought to be the director of the Office of Management and Budget, a position he held during the first Trump administration. Also, Senate committees advanced the nominations of Tulsi Gabbard to be the next director of National Intelligence and RFK Jr. to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. Over a dozen of President Trump's nominees have already been confirmed by the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The chair of the Federal Election Committee says President Trump fired her. Ellen Weintraub shared a letter from Trump on social media yesterday. Signed by the president, it said Weintraub was immediately removed as commissioner and chair of the panel. In her social media post, Weintraub said Trump was trying to replace her illegally. There was no immediate comment from the White House. Weintraub is a Democrat who was first appointed to the FEC in 2002 by then President Bush. In December last year, she was elected chair of the commission for 2025. The FEC regulates fundraising and spending by candidates for federal office and publishes disclosure reports. By law, the 6-member commission can have no more than 3 members affiliated with one party. Hours before tonight's deadline, a Trump-appointed federal judge has temporarily blocked the paid leave measure. Workers' associations had argued that President Trump lacks the authority to shut down an agency enshrined in congressional legislation.
Just before midnight Friday, thousands of USAID employees were expecting to be placed on administrative leave. A worker takes down the agency's sign on Friday. But a Trump-appointed federal judge thwarted the purge before the deadline. Judge Carl Nichols sided with 2 federal employee associations that argued Trump didn't have the authority to shut the agency down. A statement posted by the agency said all direct hire personnel, except those on mission-critical functions, core leadership, and specially designated programs, would be affected. The agency will arrange to pay for workers outside of the U.S. to return within 30 days. It will consider certain exceptions for families that have special conditions, such as children in school, pregnancy, or safety concerns. In a memo on Thursday, the administration told employees it will keep 611 essential workers, according to Reuters. At a press conference in Costa Rica on Tuesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's overseeing the agency, said the U.S. was not eliminating foreign aid.
In some cases with USAID, 10, 12, 13%, maybe less of the money was actually reaching the recipient, and the rest was going into the overhead and the bureaucracy. This isn't my money. This is taxpayer money. So we're not going to eliminate foreign aid. We're going to have foreign aid that makes sense.
Rubio said the administration plans to conduct a review during the 90-day freeze to ensure the aid furthers national interests, and that, quote, USAID in particular refused to tell us anything. Head of Doge, Elon Musk, and his team are largely being seen as responsible for the purge. On Thursday, Democratic attorneys general in several states vowed to file a lawsuit to stop Doge from accessing federal payment systems. This comes after a federal judge on Thursday temporarily blocked Doge from obtaining access to certain Treasury Department records. The Justice Department had agreed to limit access to sensitive records to only 2 special government employees within Doge. One of those employees resigned Thursday after what's being called racist posts from his past social media accounts resurfaced. Meanwhile, Musk has asked for assistance to investigate alleged threats against Doge employees. D.C. U.S. Attorney Edward Martin said in a letter on Friday that he would begin investigating referrals from Musk. He said if people are discovered to have broken the law, we will investigate them. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Elon Musk is promising to bring back an employee at his Department of Government Efficiency who resigned due to controversial social media posts. In a post on X today, Musk said he'll bring back Marco Ellis. Ellis resigned yesterday after the Wall Street Journal unearthed his private social media posts. In them, he allegedly advocated for a eugenic immigration policy and repeal of the Civil Rights Act and called himself a racist. Vice President J.D. Vance advocated for Ellis to be brought back, saying he disagrees with some of Ellis's posts, but doesn't believe social media activity should ruin one's life. Musk responded, quote, he will be brought back. To err is human, to forgive divine. Coming up, it's been nearly 3 weeks since President Trump's return to the White House. Are Americans happy with his performance so far? We hear from folks in D.C. The search continues for a missing Alaska plane carrying 10 people. Bering Air says the plane lost radio contact just 10 minutes before its scheduled landing yesterday. More details after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump has outlined his tax agenda. He met with Republican lawmakers at the White House yesterday. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt breaks down the key provisions.
No tax on tips, which is obviously a very public campaign promise that the president made. No tax on seniors' Social Security. No tax on overtime pay. Renewing President Trump's 2017 middle-class tax cuts. Again, these are the president's priorities. Adjusting the SALT cap, eliminate all the special tax breaks for billionaire sports team owners, close the carried interest tax deduction loophole, tax cuts for Made in America products. This will be the largest tax cut in history for middle-class working Americans.
The president is pushing tax incentives for U.S.-made products. He also wants changes to the state and local tax deduction cap, a priority for Republicans in high-tax states. Meanwhile, GOP lawmakers remain divided on strategy. They're debating whether to combine tax cuts with border security measures or pass them separately. Trump is urging quick action, saying he'll sign the bill as soon as Congress sends it to his desk. Republicans will need near total party unity to advance Trump's tax cuts and immigration policies, given the GOP's narrow majorities in both the House and Senate. Are you more used to drinking from a plastic straw or a paper straw? President Trump will be signing an executive order to end federal support for paper straws. The president posted on Truth Social today, quote, "I will be signing an executive order next week, ending the ridiculous Biden push for paper straws, which don't work, back to plastic." Late last year, former President Biden announced a national strategy to end government dependency on single-use plastics. Trump's plan is part of his broader push to reverse Biden's environmental regulations. Nearly 3 weeks after returning to the White House, President Trump has received a 47% approval rating among U.S. adults. That's according to data gathered by the Pew Research Center. What do everyday Americans think of his performance so far? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from them.
Does the president have your back?
No, he does not. My children are of an immigrant from Honduras, and they deserve to be here as well as anybody else.
Yeah, he's definitely got my back, and I think his approval rating is even higher than that.
It's not just my back, he's got America's back, and he's making this country greater one step at a time.
I think that we're finally getting back to some morals that are important to us, for our kids and our grandkids.
I don't think he has my back, but you know, some people, for me, I don't really support him.
He's for the people. He's a populist guy. You can tell he actually cares. I feel like he's done a lot more in his first week than the previous administration has in 4 years.
This country's in trouble. They spend way too much money on stupid stuff. We need to take care of our own people, and I think that's what he's all about.
Tell me one thing that Trump did that struck you the most.
Closing the border. And he's rounding them up, sending them back to their countries. And tariffs, I like that too.
I did like that he banned transgender men from women's sports. I did appreciate that.
Taking men out of women's sports. I have daughters, and that was a huge one to see for my girls and grandkids and things like that, and just safety and protection.
Trying to remove children who are already, or adults even, who are already citizens here, born, and take away their citizenship because they were born to an immigrant. He is not representing the United States in a fashion that I would be proud of.
Appointing Elon Musk to Doge, take care of Doge, I think that's huge. He's causing quite a stir, which is a good thing.
This is probably unpopular, but I like how it's just like restoring American dominance, forcing people's hand on the world stage to cater to American interests. And I think that's a good thing.
Making a strong point against Canada and Mexico, like, listen, we mean business. Whatever you want to believe in, how you want to believe it, at the end of the day, all eyes are on America.
The search for the missing Alaska plane carrying 10 continues. The chief operating officer of regional airline Bering Air said the plane lost radio contact 10 minutes before it was scheduled to land around 15 local time yesterday. That was over Alaska's Norton Sound off the Bering Sea.
The Alaska Department of Public Safety says the U.S. Coast Guard, Alaska Air National Guard, and state and local search teams have all been deployed. Both ground and air search efforts are underway. Recent updates from the Nome Volunteer Fire Department tell us Bering Air launched 2 search planes at first light today. Black Hawk helicopters and C-130 rescue planes are also in the sky. The Coast Guard is set to use an ice tracking buoy to monitor ice sheet movement in the area. Ice in the Norton Sound could be thick enough for the several thousand-pound plane to actually land on. It has been over 24 hours since the plane went missing. The National Weather Service reports light snow, freezing drizzle, and mist in the Nome, Alaska area on Thursday. The Nome Fire Department reports weather could be stable over the next 24 hours. The U.S. Coast Guard is overseeing the search efforts. They spoke to reporters a few hours ago.
This aircraft experienced some kind of event which caused them to experience a
rapid loss in elevation and a rapid loss in speed. What that event is, I can't speculate to. At this time, there has been some sort of item of interest that has been identified by another aircraft that is participating in the search efforts, and that Coast Guard MH-60 is being vectored over to the location of that. What that is and what that might shake out to be and what the status of the people who may or may not be there is, I can't speculate to at this time.
A National Weather Service spokesperson briefed the Nome search and rescue crew, saying Saturday and Sunday look quite messy. Chris Beers, NTD News.
The National Transportation Safety Board says it has recovered more wreckage from the Potomac River. The update says searchers recovered much of the Black Hawk helicopter. It collided with an American Airlines plane on January 29th near Reagan National Airport. The wreckage is expected to be transferred from a barge to a secure location today. The recovered debris also included additional pieces of the airplane. The NTSB has still not located the helicopter's right engine and tail rotor. Meanwhile, investigators continue to analyze aid data from both aircraft. It has been a month since the devastating Eaton and Palisades fire swept through communities in the Los Angeles area. During a Friday morning news conference, officials shared updates on the ongoing recovery and rebuilding efforts across the region. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
On Friday, Mayor Karen Bass provided an update on recovery efforts and thanked the first responders as well as President Trump for his commitment to help rebuild communities devastated by the fires. Bass highlighted the opening of the Disaster Recovery Center, which has supported over 6,000 Angelenos, and the launch of the online LA Disaster Relief Navigator, assisting over 1,000 people with recovery plans. She also mentioned cutting through red tape to speed up recovery, with the U.S. EPA currently having 1,000 personnel on the ground.
As of yesterday, the EPA reported inspecting more than 3,100 properties, and they've already cleared toxins from over 800 properties. The EPA process of debris removal and cleanup was projected to take 90 days, but the EPA is now reporting that Phase 1 hazardous waste removal should be completed by the end of this month.
For impacted businesses, Bass announced the extension of the city business tax filing deadline from February 28th to April 14th. For workers in Palisades, including gardeners, housekeepers, nannies, and employees of local businesses, the Economic and Workforce Development Department's response team is hosting regular virtual orientations to assist with wildfire-related job loss,
where Angelenos who were impacted by the fire can learn how to access job opportunities, unemployment benefits, and health care.
Bass also shared that she spoke with Governor Newsom requesting action on 2 items. She confirmed that he has already delivered, including streamlining the rebuild verification process to help homeowners access plans and confirm rebuilding entitlements.
Which means if you're going to rebuild what was already there, you can do it even quicker. Also, we ask for automatic reissuing of permits for all homes, giving people the right to build again exactly what they had before.
Bass announced plans to work with the county assessor to provide additional tax relief, including property tax rebates and utility bill relief for impacted businesses and residents. Recently, Southern California Edison submitted letters to the California Public Utilities Commission regarding investigations into the Eaton and Hearst fires. While SCE has been sued over allegations its equipment caused the fires, the investigation led by the LA County Fire Department may take months. When asked about the possibility of Southern California Edison equipment causing the fire, Mayor Karen Bass called it devastating and said the matter would need further investigation. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Coming up, President Trump announces a slew of economic activities with Japan. An analyst joins us to break down the latest actions and their impacts on U.S.-Japan relations. Shen Performing Arts was in Woking, England as part of their 2025 world tour. This as a lawmaker in the UK highlighted the Chinese regime's persecution of Falun Gong in China and attacks against Shen. More on that after the break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here's some today's top headlines. A federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from placing 2,200 employees of the USAID on paid leave. Two federal employee associations sued to stop Trump's plan, arguing that Trump lacks the authority to dismantle the agency. House lawmakers introduced a bipartisan bill to ban Chinese AI app DeepSeek from federal devices. They cited the Chinese regime's ability to use the app for surveillance and misinformation as national security threats. President Trump welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba to the White House. Trump announced that he's working to eliminate the trade deficit with Japan, and Japan will be buying liquefied natural gas from Alaska. The president also suggested that Nippon Steel would not buy U.S. steel as planned, but would instead invest in the company. And joining us now to discuss Trump's latest announcements on Japan is William Chu, Deputy Director and Japan Chair at the Hudson Institute. William, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, given Ishiba is the second foreign leader to visit the White House following Israel's prime minister, what does that signal about the importance of the U.S.-Japan relationship?
Well, Tiffany, first of all, it's great to be back and good to see you again. I think in terms of Ishiba's visit to Washington, I think it demonstrates a real affirmation of the importance of the U.S.-Japan alliance. I think Prime Minister Ishiba hit all the necessary security and economic objectives that he had set out prior to the trip, and I think in every way the visit was a real success, contrary to some previous expectations before the trip.
Now, President Trump is saying he would work to cut America's trade deficit with Japan, which sits at $68 billion. He also signaled there would be reciprocal tariffs announced next week, saying that's what's fair. What do you see as a mutually beneficial trade policy between the two countries?
Sure. Well, I think with regards to the trade deficit, granted, $68 billion is still way too high. That said, if you look at it from a historical perspective, and as a percentage of U.S.-Japan trade deficits, I think previously back in 1989, it was about 30% of total trade. Nowadays, it's only about 6.8% or about 7% or so. And so it has really declined in the past since the previous 30 years or so. And look, I think there are ways that Japan can continue to advance addressing the trade deficit. First of all, that includes increasing Japan's foreign direct investment into the U.S. To about $1 trillion. That also includes purchasing LNG, both from the Gulf as well as Alaska, to address Japan's own energy needs as well as that of Southeast Asia, while also securing a reliable pipeline and supply of LNG to feed our growing energy needs in Asia. And so I think in all ways, this has been a real step forward.
And expanding on that, Trump also announced Nippon Steel is dropping its $14.1 billion acquisition and will instead invest in U.S. steel. Given how contentious of a topic this became on the campaign trail, what do you make of this latest development as it relates to U.S.-Japan relations?
Well, I think in terms of Nippon Steel, I think it's still something that has to be considered in great detail, right? I believe next week the president, the CEO of Nippon Steel, Hashimoto Eiji-san, will be visiting Washington to visit with President Trump to discuss the parameters of the deal and Nippon Steel's investment. I think there's still more to come out of that conversation. But I think overall, this is a positive development in terms of affirming the importance of the U.S.-Japan alliance in both security and economics. Japan's dedication towards rebuilding American manufacturing and in securing a strong supply of steel needed for its industries and industrial base. And overall, I think this is I think there's more to be said here, and I think. I think we should be cautiously positive, but obviously I think there's still a lot to address.
And as you mentioned, the two discussed a pipeline project in Alaska in terms of oil and gas. How will that impact economic ties between the two?
If anything, I think it'll strengthen economic ties even further, as well as security ties, right? As Senator Dan Sullivan spoke at Hudson 2 months ago, Alaska's LNG both provides economic security for Japan, which has energy needs that are currently being addressed by Russia and other unsecure areas, right? American LNG is a much more reliable and secure source of energy going forward. Furthermore, I think this also creates an incentive for strengthening American sort of presence in the Pacific in terms of securing shipping lanes from Alaska to Japan to Southeast Asia, and really affirming the need for not just energy relationships between the U.S. and Japan and Southeast Asia, but also I think sort of maritime security, right? The safety of our shipping, that is a source of trade, that is source of great mutual economic growth and benefits for the wider Indo-Pacific region.
And speaking of security, the two, of course, discussed security concerns regarding North Korea, countering China, and maintaining peace through strength in the Indo-Pacific. What can we expect to see from the two sides when it comes to security cooperation?
Sure. In terms of security, I think what was what was good to see was the fact that both countries reaffirmed their security commitment to each other. America's willingness to an affirmation of defending Japan with all of its capable, all dimensions of its capabilities, which is really important. In addition to that, I think what was really noticeable was also the dedication of both U.S. and Japan into ensuring that there was no coercion in the Taiwan Strait. That includes not just military force, but also increasingly the gray zone and economic coercion tactics that China is using against Taiwan. And the fact that both countries have evolved their protection of Taiwan, or their commitment to ensuring no unilateral changes of the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, I think is an important development as well. As for North Korea, I think that there's a lot left to be seen. Prime Minister Ishiba certainly acknowledged the importance of the U.S. in terms of working with North Korea to address nuclear concerns. I think both countries share the same nuclear concerns and are committed to ensuring a shared sort of united front in terms of negotiating with North Korea over its nuclear weapons programs, as well as its other actions to ensure that they don't create more problems down the line in the region.
William Chu, thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you.
A lawmaker in the UK highlighted the Chinese regime's persecution of Falun Gong in China and attacks against Shen during a parliament debate yesterday. Here's Member of Parliament Jim Shannon.
For the last 25 years, Falun Gong practitioners in China have suffered relentless persecution in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. Reports from human rights organisations highlight that millions have been subjected to imprisonment, forced labour and torture simply for practising their faith. What is deeply troubling is the expansion of this campaign beyond China's borders. Leaked reports from China's Ministry of Public Security indicate that the regime is now escalating efforts to eliminate Falun Gong worldwide, using a network of spies, social media, disinformation and harassment of practitioners, even here in this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
The Member of Parliament and co-chair of the Cross-Party Group for International Freedom of Religion or Belief stressed that the Chinese Communist Party's persecution is not just an attack on religious freedom, but also an affront to British values, democracy, and the rule of law. He is urging the government to urgently investigate and counter the influence of the CCP's transnational repression in the UK. This includes CCP attacks on Falun Gong practitioners and its attempts to censor Shen performances. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual meditation practice that rose to popularity in China in the 1990s. It's based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. The CCP launched a brutal campaign of persecution against Falun Gong in 1999, which continues to this day. Classical Chinese dance group Shen took the audience on a cultural journey back to ancient China. And Woking UK, a theater producer and British talent agent, said the performance was just phenomenal. NTD is a proud sponsor of Shen. Let's take a look.
Talent agent and theatre producer Toby Cruz was among the audience watching Shen at Woking's new Victoria Theatre on February the 5th.
The whole production, the colour, the movement, and of course the music was just spectacular, and a real testament to the culture and the history of China.
Traditional art forms like music and dance were integrated into Chinese life for thousands of years, expressing benevolence, beauty, and many other virtues. Shen Yun's mission is to revive that traditional Chinese culture. Cruz said he was touched by the messages he felt from the performance.
And so many messages behind the individual stories, which I will certainly hold on to for a long time to come. How to live life purely, how to not be distracted by the noise in our world, and not to deviate from our own path, our own journey. So thought-provoking and reassuring, actually, to know that other people think that way, and it's important to hold on to those words and that message. Everything will be okay in the end, and that despite the sort of troughs and the low points on our journey, there are many high points as well, and we should hold on to those and continue.
At the heart of each Shen Yun performance is classical Chinese dance, one of the most expressive art forms in the world.
Just phenomenal, so impressive to see. Clearly they're all at the top of their game and highly dedicated, and the music the same, just wonderful musicianship and great music to accompany the pieces.
NTD UK News, Woking.
Coming up in the NFL, the MVP winner is revealed. Will it be Buffalo's Josh Allen or Baltimore's two-time winner Lamar Jackson? NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer now for your sports news. We're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on right now, but let's start in the NFL as Bills quarterback Josh Allen was named the AP's league MVP, narrowly beating out Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Do you think they got the right guy?
Well, you certainly can't go wrong with Allen, but I'll say this. Lamar Jackson, I thought put up slightly better numbers than Allen, although Allen led his team to their 5th straight division titles, despite losing his starting receivers from the previous year, among other players. So maybe you could say he did a little bit more with a lesser squad, and I think voters recognize that because the same voters nominated Jackson as a first-team All-Pro quarterback over Allen, who was named second-team All-Pro. So he's actually the first player to win MVP, despite not being a first-team All-Pro since 2003. Now, I figured the award is between those two and Saquon Barkley. Now, Barkley ended up finishing 3rd, but he was named the league's Offensive Player of the Year after rushing for more than 2,000 yards. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. Anyway, though, congratulations, though, to Josh Allen for winning.
Moving to baseball news, the former interpreter for Dodger star Shohei Ohtani was sentenced this week for nearly 5 years after stealing approximately $17 million from his client. What did prosecutors say about Ohtani regarding his involvement?
Yeah, they've repeatedly said Ohtani was just the victim here. He was unaware of his interpreter's gambling ways. And that's important because his interpreter, this is Ippei Mutsuhara, placed roughly 19,000 bets over a 2-year period, plenty of those on sports games. So there were questions of whether Ohtani was involved at all because baseball players absolutely cannot bet on baseball games. I mean, the penalty of that is a lifetime ban. Now, other than that, of course, it's a sad story. I mean, those two seem like close friends. You know, Mitsuhara was his interpreter from the get-go. As soon as he came here in 2018 for the Angels, he even briefly resigned from the team during the Major League lockout in 2021 so he could keep speaking to Ohtani. He was then rehired after the lockout ended. In any case, Mitsuhara apologized to Ohtani and the Dodgers, but he will surrender to start his sentence next month.
Shifting gears to basketball, the Luka Doncic trade was just one of a number of NBA trades that took place over the past week. Would you say any team really enhanced its title chances?
I mean, not significantly. Obviously, the Lakers made the biggest splash, of course, with Doncic. And they made another trade getting Mark Williams from Charlotte. He's somewhat of an unknown center, but he's actually really good. He's just had a lot of injuries. But they also, now those two really have to gel with LeBron James. I'm very curious to see how this is going to work on offense. Doncic is such a creator. He usually has to have the ball in his hands. James is somewhat similar, so I'm interested to see how they play together. But even at that, they need more defense for sure. Now, meanwhile, Golden State, they got six-time All-Star Jimmy Butler, but they had to give up Andrew Wiggins, who's a former All-Star himself. I think it moved the needle forward a bit for them, but it also made them older for sure. Now, the major title contenders like, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Boston, only the Cavs actually made a deal. They got small forward DeAndre Hunter from Atlanta. He's not an all-star player, but he is a good player, though. So all in all, 7 all-stars were dealt. I didn't see anyone's title chances move that much. Still was a very interesting week, of course, unless you're a Dallas Mavericks fan.
A lot of money. Looking at golf news, Tiger Woods has committed to play in next week's Genesis Invitational. That's his first PGA event since having back surgery in September.
Yeah, although he did play with his son Charlie at that PNC Championship in December, and he has played in that TGL League, the indoor virtual golf league, a couple of times. So he's tested out the back a little bit. Now this event, though, is going to be played at Torrey Pines in San Diego. Now Tiger knows this course very well. He's won there multiple times, including the 2008 US Open. Now that 2008 US Open seems quite a long time ago when looking at Woods' career, but that was actually his 14th major title, and at age 32, it looked like a foregone conclusion after he got that he was going to pass Jack Nicklaus's career record of 18 major titles. Here we are 17 years later, though. He's only got one more. He's had a whole bunch of back injuries and more leg injuries from that car accident in 2021. In any case, him being at the site of his many accomplishments, I think a lot of fans are going to come out and cheer him on.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.